හරිද? Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning we are going to do the meditation first. After the meditation, we have Dhamma Talk and the question and answer. Right now, Ravan Chansara is going to lead the meditation.
We are going to start with breathing meditation. Breathe in and breathe out very gently, smoothly. Just be mindful when we are breathing in and breathing out as they naturally occur. No force. Just observe the inhalation and exhalation as they occur naturally. Breathe in and breathe out mindfully for a couple of minutes. Now, shall we do loving kindness meditation, spreading positive loving kindness thoughts in this way? All the living beings, including me, be physically well. May all the living beings, including me, be safe. May all the living beings, including me, be mentally well. Let's continue spreading loving kindness thoughts in this way until we hear the bell sound.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Santasara, leading the meditation. Right now is time for the Dhamma Talk. Today, Dhamma Talk's going to give Ravan Kusala. He say he cannot use his video, but he can hear his audio. Kusala, you can start your talk right now.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Video still doesn't work. So you're gonna have to imagine what I look like today. I'm much better looking than I was yesterday. So just keep that in mind as I speak. The other day, Selvin came over and we went out to Fatburger, and Selvin had a veggie burger and I had some fat fries, and we were talking, and he was talking about the different kinds of meditation that are available, and I was talking about samatha meditation, and he really didn't understand too much about samatha meditation. So what I'd like to do today is explain my understanding of samatha meditation and how it might differ from vipassana meditation, and why tranquility might be better than insight for some people because of the insanity of the world. So the historical Buddha, before he was Buddha, was Siddhartha Gautama, and he went into the forests and jungles of India and studied with the meditation masters of India at the time. And they were not doing insight meditation, they were doing samatha meditation. And in doing samatha meditation, they realized, or at least Siddhartha did, that all the attributes of that meditation turned out to be temporary. That, in fact, while you were meditating, you could go into deep states of tranquility, bliss, and happiness. But once you got off the cushion, the world crashed back into you, and you had to deal with all the anxiety and fear and tension and stress of being a human on earth. So Siddhartha did something that the Buddhas before him did, is he rediscovered insight meditation, which allowed him to achieve nirvana, which allowed him to end his suffering forever. And that is what he has given us today in his Vipassana insight meditation. But I found this interesting, that he never stopped doing samatha meditation. And when he was dying, he went into the fourth jhana and died in peace and tranquility. So let's talk a little bit about what tranquility meditation is. Tranquility meditation is sustained concentration. It's going deep into the object of meditation and allowing the sense doors to close and have a completely internal present moment experience of your meditation object. Now, what I found fascinating about that is that while you're deep in tranquility, you have no hearing, you have no seeing, you have no smelling or touching or feeling. You have an absolute internal experience. And then when the gong rings, you come out and again, you're a little bit lighter, you're a little bit more peaceful, but ultimately and eventually it goes away. So what are the characteristics of jhana and tranquility meditation? There are 8 jhanas, 4 form and 4 formless. So I'm going to talk about the form jhanas. And the first jhana has 5 characteristics. The 5 characteristics of the first jhana are applied thought, sustained thought, happiness, bliss, and equanimity. Those 5 characteristics arise when one enters into the first jhana. Now, applied thought and sustained thought mean this, that you are focusing on the object of meditation and you are continuing to focus and not getting distracted. So we have applied thought and sustained thought. And then because of that, we have peace, happiness, tranquility, and equanimity. So in Buddhism, meditation allows us to get rid of things, but it doesn't allow us to accumulate anything. We don't add anything to our practice. We get rid of the things that are preventing us from going deeper and deeper into our tranquility meditation. So the first thing we need to give up is applied thought and sustained thought. And that is relatively easy because what happens is our minds just settles, just rests on the object of meditation. And there's no effort on our part to keep it there. It has become tethered, if you will, to the object of meditation. So without applied thought and sustained thought, we go into the second jhana, which has happiness, bliss, and equanimity. Okay, now we have to decide, what am I going to give up? Am I going to give up happiness? Am I going to give up bliss? Am I going to give up equanimity? And in fact, is it possible to do that? Or are we stuck with having to struggle and wrestle with the idea of giving up, letting go of those 3 characteristics? Well, I came to the conclusion that it's not about giving up, for instance, bliss or pleasure. It's giving up the attachment to bliss and pleasure. And that's the deal. So we don't give up bliss. We give up our attachment to bliss, which is a physical sensation, a pleasurable sensation. And if we can figure out how to give up our attachment to bliss, we go into the third jhana, which has 2 characteristics, happiness and equanimity. Now, the idea of giving up bliss or attachment to bliss is we're giving up our aversion to pain. So we're talking a physical level, pleasure, pain, bliss, pain. We're letting go of that physical aspect. And now we're going into the mental aspect of happiness and sadness. And if we're able to give up our attachment to happiness and our aversion to sadness, we now rest in the 4th jhana, which has 1 characteristic, equanimity, balance, perfect mind without it being attached to anything or averse to anything. It's simply consciousness in its rare state, without us getting involved, without the ego, the personality, the self, defining what is good and what is bad, and what is right and what is wrong, and what is attachment and what is aversion. That all falls away, and we simply rest in the present moment of our experience. Now, that's probably about as close to nirvana as we're going to get without actually having achieved nirvana, is that perfect balance. So if you're new to Buddhist meditation, you might think that the idea in Buddhism is to ultimately be happy. And we're all striving in our own special way to find that happiness. But I find generally speaking, what Buddhism is encouraging us to do is go beyond happiness, because that also is attached to sadness, and find this absolute peace of existence, this perfect balance. And in a world that we live in today, this balance sounds like a wonderful refuge from all the crud that keeps getting shown on television and YouTube and TikTok and all the other stuff, all the ways we're trying to distract ourselves from our pain and our suffering and our discontent and our dis-ease. So now we're in the fourth jhana. We have found it as a peaceful abode, and the gong rings, and slowly we come out of this trance-like state, if you will, and back to the everyday reality that we're so used to, and realize that we're just a little bit lighter. We're not quite as heavy or pessimistic as we normally would be. And that feeling can travel with us for quite a while, but ultimately it goes away. Now, one of the characteristics of tranquility is this balanced, peaceful mind. And one of the characteristics of insight meditation is this wonderful clarity and looking into the true nature of reality. And I did that for the first couple of years of my meditation practice, and became a little disappointed in the true nature of my reality, because it didn't seem to alleviate any of the psychological suffering that I was experiencing. It just sort of heightened everything, made the feelings of discontent and dis-ease even stronger rather than weaker. So I shifted gradually from insight to tranquility meditation, realizing that I would probably never achieve nirvana, because the Buddha achieved nirvana in insight, and I was letting it go. But there's this monk from Sri Lanka called Gunaratna, and he did his doctor's thesis on tranquility meditation and nirvana. And in the doctorate, he said, yes, you can achieve nirvana in tranquility meditation by using the rather than insight into the true nature of the world, it's insight into the true nature of you psychologically. Now, if you're at all curious about what he had to say about that, I have it on my website, urbandharma.org. And if you do a search for Gunaratna, I'm sure it will come up. Or you might want to go to I have ebooks, an ebook link that will take you. And I'm pretty sure it's on there. But I will check after I am through speaking today to make sure it is available and up, if you're curious about that, because I found that fascinating. And I found he was the only one that talked about achieving nirvana with samatha meditation. Okay, so one can achieve the final goal in tranquility meditation. One can achieve a more peaceful state of mind in our everyday activities, and one can continue to be relevant and conscious in their everyday activities and chores that we all have to do. So I am an advocate for that. And what you find in the Mahayana tradition is a larger emphasis on tranquility and less so with insight. And so if you're at all curious about that, Dogen has a lot to say about it. And it's fascinating how the two schools of Buddhism, Mahayana and Theravada, that seems to be the fork in the road. So Theravada emphasizes mindfulness, and Mahayana emphasizes tranquility, or samatha meditation. Okay. I want to talk about one more thing while I still have some time, and that is a strategy to deal with the insanity of the world. And I have been thinking about this for a while, and I spoke about this yesterday at Leisure World in Seal Beach, and that talk is available on my Facebook page and my podcast page. And so if you're curious about that, it's 50 minutes of me telling stories and talking about stuff. But to give you a brief overview of what I've talked about, I feel that in order to keep our sanity, we need to have a strategy to deal with the world. It seems to be getting more like the 1960s than the 20s. And we've got the China and Taiwan. We have Russia. We have the Ukraine. We have a variety of national and international problems that keep arising, and there doesn't seem to be any way to deal with it other than go, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to watch more TV and less news, or whatever one's strategy might be. So this is what I came up with, that the first thing we need to do to keep our mental health is to practice the 5 precepts. And the 5 precepts then allow us to change our karma in a very positive and wholesome way. So the 5 precepts, as you all know, are: I will practice not to take life. I will practice not to harm. That's the first precept. Second precept, I will practice not to take what is not given. I will practice not to steal. The third precept is I will avoid sexual misconduct. I will seek kindness and love. Third precept. The fourth precept is I will not speak unskillfully. I will not lie. And the fifth precept is I will not consume intoxicants. I will not get high, because I need my clarity to deal with the insanity of the world. Now, just as a side note, and literally this blew my mind when I heard this, my favorite football team turns out to be the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. And if you've seen Aaron Rodgers lately, he has long hair and a ponytail and sort of a gruffy little beard. And he was being interviewed by someone who has a sports channel. And he was questioning Aaron on this and questioning Aaron on that. And Aaron came up with this. I started doing psychedelics, Aaron says, and it's changed my life. I'm in love with everyone and everything now, and I had the best year ever as a quarterback because of the psychedelics. And I'm going to myself, what the hell? You know, we all went through that. Ram Dass advocated that for a while, and Timothy Leary had a whole movement of tune in, turn on, and drop out. And you know, and as a Buddhist meditator, one who practices the 5 precepts, clarity is such an important characteristic of the Buddhist path. Wisdom and compassion, clarity and kindness, such an important part of the path. And it doesn't come from psychedelics. Psychedelics, a very temporary way of achieving a higher mind state or level of consciousness, but it's temporary. And the problem with psychedelics is you have to keep taking them in order to get to that place. It's just a launch pad, as Ram Dass used to say. So we don't even want to go there. We've been through all of that. Ram Dass, towards the end of his life, wasn't as positive about the psychedelic experience as he had been when he was a younger man. And Tim Leary went into computers when in his later years. And we all know what happens to everybody. They all die. So while we're alive, we have this wonderful human birth. Clarity becomes so important. And so I just looked at Aaron Rodgers in that interview and I said, man, he's like the new hippie now, he's like the new hippie. And all of us who are over 40 or 50 have seen it and realized that all those old hippies finally got a job, got a mortgage, and got a couple cars and have a giant family now, and just sort of join the rest of us as we went through life. Okay, so the first thing we need to do if we want to keep our mental health is to practice the 5 precepts every day. The second thing we need to do is we need to understand this aspect of Buddhist wisdom, that all things change, all things are impermanent. Don't get attached. Don't worry about aversion, because all the stuff you hate will be gone sooner or later, and all the stuff you love will be gone sooner or later. And if you're clinging and holding and trying to control, you're going to be so disappointed and so unhappy, because it's not going to work. We have 999 reasons why something happens, and we're the one reason. We have one aspect of control. We can contribute to everything in our life, but we're just simply one of the 999. So don't think that you're going to be able to change anything in a very dramatic way, even if you got 1,000 people together or 10,000 people together. You can see that that doesn't change very much at all either. So the idea is sort of like, I can control myself using the 5 precepts. And those 5 precepts deal with my speech karma and my action karma. I can have good results with speech and action by using the 5 precepts, and by understanding that everything is in a constant state of flux and change. I won't be taken in by thinking I can control the outcome of everything in my life. The second thing we need to understand, I think, in order not to go insane, is to realize that ultimately, not always, but ultimately, everything becomes unsatisfactory. And that's really a difficult one to experience, because we think we are entitled to happiness. But because everything is ultimately dissatisfaction, filled with dissatisfaction, we're going to be so disappointed if we cling and hold on to. And even with the best relationship that we've ever had, one of the partners, us or them, are going to die or move away. Nothing lasts because of impermanence and change. So it's so disappointing to look at the world and realize that Lake Mead is dwindling by the day, and pretty soon we're going to have some water wars with all these states that are connected to the Colorado River, and it's just going to be wow, and then we got the global warming thing happening, and we go wow, and nobody wants to spend enough money to fix that, and we go wow, and then you have to say to yourself, well, yeah, but everything changes all the time, so it's not always going to be like that. It can only go 2 ways. It's only going to get better, or it's only going to get worse. One of the two. And everything's unsatisfactory. So why should I be surprised that the world is such a difficult place to live in? Why should that surprise me? What did I expect? What kind of hope and dreams did I have that now turn out to be just sort of like castles in the sky? Hopes and dreams really don't do too much. If you want to change something, don't hope for it, work on it. Be the cause for the change. So those are 2. And the third thing in Buddhist wisdom that really sort of rang true for me was the fact that we are not who we think we are. And if that reality is true, we can never take it personally. Whatever happens, it's not about us. We are interconnected and interdependent with everything all the time. And when we point and say, that's affecting me, well, what is the me? How does that me look? How does that me feel? Does it stand independently, or is it interconnected? Is it a process, or is it an event? And most of us, myself included, think that we are an event, but ultimately we turn out to be simply part of the process. So keeping the 5 precepts in mind is a way to change your speech karma and your action karma. Keeping the idea that everything changes, everything's in a constant state of flux, and therefore, every time we attach to something, we're going to be disappointed. Number 2, everything is ultimately unsatisfactory because everything always changes. And don't take it personal because you are not who you think you are. Now, let me give you one positive note on that. Because we are in process, because we are not who we think we are, we have the ability to be anything, anything. So we're not limited by the little self that says you are this. We're not limited by all the people around you that say you are this. We say to ourselves, no, I'm not that. I am in a process of becoming something all the time. And I can direct that process to become something that I want to be, I need to be, I should be, I could be. All the ideas that we have of who we are and where we're going, we can be in charge because nothing exists in the way we think it does when it comes to who we are. So those are some strategies that may be useful if you are prone to watching the news like I am, or reading online newspapers like I am, and realizing the world is probably going to end in one giant plume from atomic bombs being thrown to everybody. But again, we had this in the 60s. This is all about the 60s. We had Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped and became a bank robber. What the hell? Come on. We had the war in Vietnam. You know, people were leaving the country. It was an unjust war. Nobody wanted the war. We had Richard Nixon and Watergate. It just keeps going on and on and on. And then we had maybe the 80s and 90s, and everybody was sort of like relaxed and buying property and making money and having a good time and watching all sorts of movies. And now we're in the 2000s. We've had a 2-year pandemic. People are just up in arms about what they're going to do next, where they're going to live, how they're going to work, da, 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 da. Every nation in the world seems to be unsure with the next step going on. So it has always been this way, but it doesn't have to affect us in an ultimately negative way, because we can use the teachings of the Buddha to make sense of the insanity in the world. And that's what I wanted to say today. I wanted to talk a little bit about samatha meditation and a little bit about the insanity of the world. And I'd be interested to hear if anybody has any comments on what I've said, or would like to add anything to what I've said. And I'm sorry you can't see me, but you know what? I look much better in audio than I do in video. So okay. Yeah, Richard.
I have a question. Thank you for coming today and talking to us. I always appreciate it. Okay, I just want to make clear on what samatha meditation is. Could you give me a practical, how does it actually work?
Yeah, exactly. So what you would do, let me say what I do. What I do to go into samatha meditation is I take my position on the floor and I become aware of the sensation of breath, and it's going out and coming in and going out and coming in. Okay, and sometimes I'll count. If I'm a bit distracted that day, I'll count the breath, 1, 2, 3, up to 10, down to 1, up to 10, down to 1. After I have stabilized my meditation and I'm following the breath, then I let go of the counting and simply rest on the sensation of breath. Okay, that's the second part. Just no counting, no concepts, simply a sensation of breath. Then I go inside. Now, how do you go inside? How do you look inside? I said to myself. And then I thought about flash photography. And I remembered that every time somebody took a flash photograph, that there was residue. I could see the flash for a few moments after it was over. And that was internal. And I thought to myself, maybe I can use that to look inside. So what I would do is I would squint my eyelids really tight and relax them. And I'd see all these points of light. And I'd squeeze it really tight again and relax them. And I'd see all these points of light. And what I would do is I would then take my focus from the sensation of breath to the points of light. And that became the internal journey. And the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, talks about this. And the monks of old, they probably didn't squint their eyelids because they didn't have flash cubes, and they probably did a whole different thing. But what they had is they had kassinas. So for instance, they would take an animal skin and they would hang it up, and they'd cut a hole in the middle of the animal skin, a circular hole, and then they would build a fire behind the animal skin and look through the hole and see the flames. And they would say to themselves the word fire, and then they close their eyes, and then they'd open their eyes and they say fire, and they close their eyes. And eventually, after enough time, they were able to see the fire without looking at it, that they had brought that image internally. And so they no longer to look outside to see the fire, they could look inside. Blows my mind when I read that the first time. So
thank you.
That's, I'm not suggesting you need to get an animal skin, but there you go.
That's probably what people do with the candle. They can still see the candle when they close
You know
their
what? Yeah, exactly.
flame. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
I have a question.
Okay. Hi, Mira.
Hi, Kusla. Nice to hear you. That was an excellent talk. I'm just curious about a couple of things. I was privileged, and quite by accident, to have a very long dinner with Ram Dass in the Amazon jungle when we were there for two different purposes. He came down with a group, I came down with a movie company, and I was stuck down there for a couple of months, and he was stuck down there for, I think, 3 weeks. Stuck isn't the right word, but we were there. So I contacted him and said, can we have dinner? And then we began a friendship, because there was no place to go but the forest, which was incredibly dangerous at every turn. And I asked him specifically, I said, what is the point of all this life? What is the point of it? And one of the things that he said, and he talked a lot about meditation, is he said, I made some notes. He said, the Buddha said, at the end, or not necessarily on the last day, but after he'd had a following and a practice, he said, we are the happy ones. The Buddhists were the happy ones, because there was all of this, life is suffering. And that was the mantra that had gotten out to the rest of India that weren't Buddhist and didn't know. They were like, oh, Buddhists are negative, it's all about suffering. And he said, no, we're the happy ones. And I think the idea of happiness, in that, and equanimity are, even though you have to merge with impermanence and understand that things change and internalize as much as possible. But I did more than my share of LSD in high school. I was lucky that it was the right time to do it. It was the early 70s. I wouldn't go near it now. I wouldn't go near it now anyway, because I've taken precepts to not. And I had no interest, but I did a lot of it in high school. High school was so boring. And I talked to him about that. And he was still doing it. He was actually down there to run, not run, but oversee an ayahuasca group, a group of Americans and Europeans that had come down to try ayahuasca and meet local natives and help them, ostensibly. And I said, does it get old? And he said, it never gets old. And my experience, and we shared this, is that I would be a completely different person. I mean, my thinking, my view of how I see out into the world, I wouldn't have the tools if I hadn't done the LSD. There's no question, because I went from being me, and then when it kicked in, I was seeing the world in a completely different way. And you never forget it. You never forget it, because it's your mind that's doing it. The world isn't changing in front of you. Your mind is expanding in a way, I think I was an artist. As a kid, I went to the High School of Art and Design. That's what I was going to do. And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like when I would pick up a brush and had some faint idea of what I wanted to paint, I had no idea what it would turn out to be. And that mystery between the action and the result, I don't think that ever leaves.
Right. Could I comment on that?
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And I feel the same way about meditation. That meditation, I started at the age of 28, and it has changed the way I perceive the world forever. So I did it in sort of a more natural way. I was never drawn to psychedelics. I smoked cigarettes and drank beer, and that satisfied me. And the other day, somebody says, would you take any drugs now, Kusla? Do you take any drugs to get high? I said, I don't need to. At my age, all I need to do is stand up quickly, and I get the same results. So as we get older, I think it becomes less important to challenge our consciousness, because everything starts to dim. I don't know if you have felt that, but the hearing isn't quite as sharp, and the seeing isn't quite as sharp, and the mind is filled with forgetfulness sometimes, and everything starts to dim. So it I think behooves us to get plenty of rest, eat correctly, maybe take your vitamins if you're into that, but to keep what we have as long as we can. And then when you said, what does it all mean? What's the meaning of life? What is all this? I have come to the conclusion it means anything we want it to. It doesn't come with a label. It just says, okay, you've got life now, do with it as you wish. And all the meaning will come from you. And if you don't want to give it a meaning, there are 7 billion other people who will help you give it a meaning. And then we die. It's just wow, what an interesting concept life is, and how rare and how short, and how much are we doing to enhance our life and the lives of others? Are we involved in social movements to make the world a better place, or are we hiding our head in the sand because it doesn't affect us? But of course it does. It affects everything. So those are really good comments you made. I appreciate that. I got the same thing from meditation. It wasn't chemical, it was practice. And I thank myself for getting involved in meditation, because it did change the world, at least in the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I see. Hannah, how are you? I see you over there. Are you doing okay?
Hi, Kusala. It's great to hear you. I'm doing great. I'm in Northern California, maybe coming back to LA, who knows. I had a question, but I see we are running out of time.
Is it a short question?
I don't know. You could decide. You want to hear it?
Okay, sure.
Okay. I just wondered, so about how you see the relationship between non-attachment and everything always changing and life being ultimately satisfactory, the relationship between that, between impermanence and loving kindness.
Yeah. That's good. I'll just talk about a real quick sound bite
Good.
that came out of me. A couple of weeks ago, I was speaking at the Redondo Beach Center for Spiritual Living, and it's on my YouTube channel if you're curious about what I had to say there. But one of the things I said there, I thought was very profound that I had never said before. And that's the great part about live presentations, is you really don't know what you're going to talk about. So I said this, that compassion changes the world and kindness changes us. And I thought, yeah, that's about it, because what compassion is, according to me, is the activity of kindness. Compassion is the activity of kindness. So I that's about as much as I'll say because we're out of time,
Yeah,
but
thank
hopefully
you.
it gives you food for thought.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, hon. Good. Okay, well, I'll turn it back to the Zendo. I see we are out of time. And thank you all for tuning in. And I'm now going to work on getting my camera fixed. And so the next time you can see me, and I know that'll just make your day. So, all right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you. Can you
All
just,
right, thank you.
can you just repeat what you said? Compassion is the
Compassion is the activity of kindness.
kindness. I had it right. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Almost 12 o'clock, we have to chant and we have to announce something. So thank you for everybody again. And we're going to chant the page 4 and page 10. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to save them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick fly have release. Nguyện chí tự không đức phổ cập ư nhân thiên ngã đành dự chúng sanh nhất than Phật đạo. Nguyện di sự không đức vô cập ư nhân thiên ngã đặng dự chúng sanh nhất than Phật đạo. Nguyện di tự không đức phổ cập ư Thank you again for everybody. Few announcement. Next Sunday, Stephen Subodha is going to give a Dhamma talk. He's our member and our student. He give talk many times in temple. He's going to give a talk coming Sunday, I believe it's 14th of the August. Then the 21st of the August, we are going to do the Ulamana service, which is offering merit for the departure relatives. And we're going to do the service in Sendo and lunch down in Anand Hall, and the lunch outside. We have different food. Please come and join with us. And the beginning with the September 1st, we are planning to do some kind of meditation program every Sunday. I think Sunday 9:30 we can start 9:30 to 10:30, 1 hour, just meditation. Then 11 o'clock Sunday service starting. So if you are interested, please come and join. I believe it's going to be start September per Sunday. Basically, we're going to do only per Sunday. I mean, only one Sunday, per Sunday of each month. Okay, so if it is maybe going to continue every other 2 Sundays or whatever later. So beginning with the September per Sunday, we're going to do the meditation. I believe Mr. Nam and myself, we are going to lead. So come and join. Again, thanks for everybody. Anything else now? That's it. That's it, eh? No more. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Now.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you for everybody. By the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Nice to see you, Shanti.